I am Jeff Foxworthy, and welcome to Gamekeeper Podcast. If you want to learn more about farming for wildlife and habitat management, then, buddy, you are in the right place. Join the Gamekeeper crew direct from Mossy Oak Land Enhancement Studio as they discuss the latest wildlife and habitat management practices, news, and, of course, hunting. There's no telling what you'll learn, but I'm going to tell you, I bet it's interesting. Enjoy.
We're live in 3, 2, 1.
All right, everybody, it is an exciting time today. Here in West Point, Mississippi, we've got a young lady this is her first trip to the Mossy Oak headquarters, Toxic.
What?
I did not know that.
Wow. It is.
And we've been dealing with her a long time.
Yeah, we've been close for a very long time. I mean, I will say, I was wait till the right time I say it now. As you reminded me about this day, and I've all around the company, different people have had interface with, especially my son Daniel. And I'm not saying that anybody has that many faults or whatever that we had on here. I don't mean that's a sliding by us, but I've never, at any angle, had anybody have anything but great things to say about her and her work being brilliant too. So
Absolutely.
I
second that.
Yeah, I mean it's like, you know, when you walk, but when you walk through life, and you leave a trail of goodwill like that, it's so special. So. Anyway, just to head that up, I've never had anybody that everyone sang the praises of that I ran into. And it doesn't matter whether it's Dr. Chamberlain or someone within the company or someone at the NWTF or wherever, you know.
Yeah.
So looking forward to this.
Welcome, Tes Jolly.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
It's an honor to be here. I didn't know it was going to be quite as not embarrassing, but
Well, you're blushing.
I'm blushing. I'm sorry. But thank you. I appreciate it very much.
You deserve the credit
No
for
doubt
not
about
just
it.
your work, which you're pretty famous for now, but the way you've handled yourself. Because I'm pretty bad. They get on to me kind of preaching. I don't want to be preaching about it. But when someone is a great example, that's not really preaching. That's just shining a light on goodness. That's all I was getting at.
There you go.
Yeah. Well, let me just kind of back up just a little bit and set the stage. This is the first time we've ever podcast, and maybe this is 203 or 4.
It's definitely over 200.
That Toxie has beat Lanny.
Now, I thought I had the time wrong when I looked in the studio. Dudley was even here.
Dudley was here too.
So for the people out there, there's an old saying from 35 years ago, maybe or so, meetings or whatever, and then I would be like 5 minutes late, and people would kind of frown, and then Bill or somebody would say, "What are you talking about? Toxie time, he's 10 minutes early." So that became a buzzword when someone's late. He's on Toxie time. So
yeah, it is.
Lanny was on Toxie
I was a
time.
couple, I was
Well,
just late there.
So, usually we talk about blood on the biologic, but Alabama and maybe some places in Mississippi, and I think maybe even Louisiana, by now deer season is out. February 10th ended it.
Yeah,
Just closed it
everywhere.
out,
Yeah. So now we can totally turn the page.
I mean, we may not be seeing people harvesting wild game, but I mean, I'm seeing folks out there with their kids doing burns and running trap lines.
Yeah.
Gamekeeping is.
Speaking of blood on
12
the
months a year,
biologic,
baby.
blood on the Toxie.
Oh yeah. Michael Hunter's wife got a deer.
She
That's
did.
some
Did
blood
she?
on the biologic.
First deer ever. Yep,
Nice.
Killed an 8-point at Shamola with us.
Oh, good deal.
oh, wow.
It was exciting for her, really exciting. I didn't realize, I think her dad used to work for like the Forest Service. And
Oh, really?
I didn't realize, I thought he was just trying to kind of get her to go and all, but she took to it like a veteran.
Is she Canadian?
Yes,
How about that?
Allie.
Go, Allie.
No
Congrats.
doubt about it.
Yeah. That's awesome. I love the way you communicate there, though, with Dudley. That's
He's texting, old school style.
So yeah, that's great. But so my point is, we're just so excited to finally turn the page and just we can really focus on turkeys and where we're located. We get the benefit of the late February season that we can take advantage of that, and so a lot of people up in the Midwest they've been thinking about turkeys for a while, and we've been thinking about them, but we still had
We always think about them.
we still had deer on the brain too.
Yeah.
Well, a little bit. The warm weather in the late season makes it just terrible.
Right.
I mean, just that 70-something degrees last week, it was just dead.
So
But we've had fun for years. When it was the last week of January, it was the last of the season. Or now, that first week of February, we've always called it Meat Week because a lot of people hadn't had much luck, and we would just go simply to try to kill those or whatever we could, to make sausage and hamburger. So it's been fun. Takes the pressure off. We're not necessarily chasing down that one, big one we found a picture of or whatever the case is, and just go have fun and celebrate the closing. So we did close it out.
Yeah, and it's such a long season. It's kind of a little bit of relief when it 100%,
1,000%.
Yeah. Love to see it come, and then I love to see it go. Of course, then we're only 4 weeks out from youth 3 or 4 weeks out from youth turkey season.
It's like not even that long. The youth in South Florida is like in less than 2 weeks, maybe.
Yeah, the McKillers are going down there.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
I think it's the last weekend in February, actually, for way south.
Yeah.
I mean, I used to have and I'm sure a lot of y'all are like this too, that window between deer and turkey, you were all excited about turkey. Well, I'm kind of already having fun. Like turkey season's already here.
Oh, 100%.
It's actually almost, it's more fun sometimes because you don't have that pressure to go or take people all the time or whatever the case when it gets so busy. And for me, unfortunately, people plan things I have to go do, and I just I'd rather be a leaf in the wind. I'd rather
Soccer.
be a leaf in the wind. Y'all know me, or a recluse, either one.
But
let's get up and listen to them. And I tell you what, they have squirrel season still open.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, looking for scratching, and I mean, I consider that turkey season. I mean, I can't carry a shotgun, but
I know we talk about.
I'm out in the woods having fun.
I want to hear what she has to say, but when I've said this forever, I'm consistent. When I can go out, and the mornings are to the point where they're not quite there here.
No.
Because Neil was down there, and he's like, I said, you're wasting your time. The front just came through. It's cold. And he wouldn't listen. He didn't hear anything. But when I know I can get up and I can go hear some, I'm at peace.
Well, Tess can talk about that a lot because she's
absolutely.
not, I mean, her season doesn't really run out.
She has no season.
Yeah, so look, why don't we start with, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? We've been dealing with you and using your photography for the Gamekeepers magazine
forever.
For years, and anybody that reads a hunt magazine has seen pictures, especially turkeys that you've taken and deer. But tell us a little background about you, if you don't mind. Let's start there.
I didn't kill my first turkey until I was in my late 30s. We always hunted hogs. My dad took me hunting, smuggled me into a men's only hunt club and named me Harvey. And told me not to smile at anybody when I was 9 years old. So my hunting and interest started really young. And my dad always had a camera. He was a self-taught photographer and recorded all of our hunts and all of our activities and all. So I had a camera in my hand when I was young. I had a little Kodak 110 Instamatic that had the little bulbs in a square.
Oh, yeah.
That flipped around when you took the pictures. So I took pictures of our hog hunts and fishing and everything that we did. So I just continued that all through my life. I've had a lot of careers in my life, from lab tech for a blood bank to raising racing greyhounds with my family for about 30 years. And then when I met Ron Jolly at an NWTF convention in Atlanta in 95, everything kind of turned. I was getting out of the greyhound business, and when we got married, we started videoing together. And I liked the videoing, but I wasn't as crazy about it as I was about still photography. And through him and Primos, I met Paul Brown, and I think all of y'all know Paul.
Really, really
He's
well.
A super good friend. He was my first mentor.
Wow.
And he encouraged me.
He's a good one.
He said, you've got all the talents and gifts from being a hunter to do for wildlife photography, because wildlife photography is hunting, but you're just hunting with a camera. That's your weapon. Your shutter's your trigger. And the good thing about it is you get to recycle the wildlife. And I think that was, that's a big thing to me, because I love to hunt, but I also like the thought of being able to go back and shoot more photos of the same animal. So anyway, Paul sold me his lens, one of his old lenses, came over to the farm, spent some days with me, showing me some basics and all. And that was back when we were shooting slides, and got me started on it, and the bug hit me hard. And Jolly went to work for the DCNR, and I just found my way a lot of it just kind of God just opened doors and put people in front of me. And the big door that opened was White Oak Plantation that's in our area, hired me to be their first woman turkey guide. And by then I had been turkey hunting. A friend had taken me in Alabama when I moved down there, and the first hunt, he yelped up this little black, probably weighed 17 pounds, true Eastern down in the swamp. Yeah, and it nearly ran over me. And I mean, I was like, he said, you better shoot it. He's going to be in your lap. And I was hooked from there. It was like, I love this, getting so close to him and being able to communicate. So I had been hunting for a while and met the Pitmans, their shirt tail relation to me. And Bo said, I need a woman to guide. And I said, well, I'm not really a seasoned turkey hunter. He said, you know how to move around in the woods? I said, yeah, pretty much. You can lose me in a mall, but you won't usually lose me out in the woods. So he hired me, and I worked there for about 3 years. And I met so many good people in the business, editors and reps and writers, and they opened doors. Jim and Sherry Crumley, Jim Spencer, Jim Cassida, Aaron Pass, all of these great people in the outdoor business. And they started reviewing my work, and I just would give it to them and say, hey, tell me how I can get better. And it just evolved from there. I just kept trying and kept shooting. And it's like Paul said, he said, you get out there and you shoot some more. So, companies like Mossy Oak and all the others that have taken my work have been that process of putting people in front of me to help me make, to be better at what I do. And when God gives you a gift, that's what drives me. And I know it's what drives all of y'all. I hear y'all say it. And that's what is closest to my heart, is being able to share what God created. And being out in nature is being in his presence. So that's what's brought me up to this point. And I love it.
Amen.
No doubt about it.
That's a good story.
See these people? When the clock strikes 5, it's not the end. It's just the beginning. They have to do these things. They have to do those things. Enter the all-new LS Tractor MT2 and MT2E, a relentless force of innovation. Redesigned with a new hood and cab built for comfort and visibility, with enhanced lifting capacity to get the job done. Making these people the ones everyone else calls those people. Visit your local LS Tractor dealer today.
Moultrie was first in feeders since 1979 and is the leader in total game management. They're taking feeding to another level with the new Ranch Series line of durable and versatile feeders, perfect for both wildlife and domestic livestock. So Dudley, you can feed your goats. Whether you're a deer hunter, a hobby farmer, a land manager, or a rancher, Moultrie has you covered with several kit options, including a rotating auger, broadcast, or a gravity kit. And these feeders are 300 or 450 pounds. They're big feeders. All right, so guys, Moultrie is offering our listeners a 15% site-wide discount at MoultrieFeeders.com. Use code Mossy Oak with a capital M, Mossy Oak, at MoultrieFeeders.com and get that 15% discount. How did you enjoy being a guide?
Man, I loved it. I never had, in 3 years, I never had any man, and most of them were men, ever treat me like he didn't think he wanted to be, traipsing through the woods and around water moccasins and everything else. It was really a great experience. I don't know if other women, I know there's women that kind of look at hunting as a competition, but I just never looked at it that way. My dad just wouldn't let us ever try to compete. And, it was probably one of the most memorable 3 years of my life, was getting to hunt with some of the most notable people in the business, but then just everyday people. I got most of the kids, and I got what women came through, and nearly got shot by one of the women. That was the closest I ever came to being in a bad accident. But the Pitmans ran a really good operation, and there were lots of turkeys then. That was back in the mid-'90s. And, we had our pranksters, we had our fun. And unfortunately, Bo Pitman had a bad timbering accident last October. And he's not here anymore, but that was one of the best experiences I could have ever had. That opened so many doors. But Bo wouldn't let you drive anywhere on that 21,000 acres he had leased. You had to walk in from the road. So he didn't believe in scaring turkeys. You were on the list if you scared turkeys and made them fly. So you had to pull your weight when you took somebody in a spot that he gave you. You had to walk.
That's interesting. There's probably a good lesson right there.
Yeah, I think that adds to the experience, if you ask me.
Yeah, it does. It teaches you more about woodsmanship, and I love technology so much that we have nowadays. But I think it's pulled some of us a little bit away from the real experience of the outdoors, and that's getting out there and spending time. And as a photographer, I haven't had to give that up. I spend a lot of time out there, but I see some people that rely a lot on technology to find a turkey or find a good spot. And time is a lot of the issue nowadays. People are spread so thin, but I just think the woodsmanship is a big, big part of turkey hunting.
100%. There's no doubt, yeah. And the people that teach that to others, I think there's it's a special place for those people, because that's oftentimes you can be a little selfish and say, well, I'm not going to show somebody. I learned this the hard way. I'm not going to show them that. But the ones that'll take a little time and share stuff with others,
turkey hunters tend to be a little selfish. I mean, I am. We want to kind of keep those special spots and those special birds.
I'd like to think of it as more insecure.
Well, whatever. Yeah, I know what you mean, but it is. I think it's the one game animal that's a little bit, you get, and I confess to being selfish, like with the bird lover boy that I've photographed for 6-7 years. I didn't want anybody knowing about him. Right. I really didn't, because the experience with a turkey is just so unique. There's just so much more to it that people might miss if they don't pull the trigger. And I enjoy seeing what turkeys do. So I get to see a lot of the stuff that maybe the average hunter doesn't really know turkeys do. And if anything, photography will teach you so much about their habits. And there's nothing in stone with turkeys. We all know that. I mean, they'll make a liar out of you every time if you do and say an absolute about them.
Never trust them. Never trust them.
Never say always or never when you're talking about turkeys.
So you make a good point, because a lot of times, as soon as we finally get to see the bird, he's maybe in range and we kill him. And then that moment's kind of over with, and you don't get to see what would have happened. And you're saying you get to watch all that through the lens. And so what are some of the things that you've noticed that most people miss?
Well, I think I don't use decoys a lot, but I have found that, like an old bird late in the season, that the hens are off incubating and all, and he's lonesome. He's still got the testosterone and up and all. I have photographed and spent times with longbeards that will stay until after dark, standing on a turkey's back, on a deek's back. They will not give it up. And I wrote a piece for I think it was Gamekeepers.
It's a great magazine.
That Love is Blind. When Jolly came to pick me up, I told him, I said, this bird is not leaving. He's been on this decoy, just zoned in. And I said, just pull up. It's a 300-yard long food plot. And I said, just ease up in there and he'll see you and he'll move off. I don't want to scare him, but just ease up there. Well, I was down about 250 yards from where he pulled into it. at dusk in a gray silver SUV, and that old bird's out there in front of me, and he's all bowed up. He's just staring at that hen. He's been there for an hour, and he'd peck her head, and he'd walk around, and he just kept easing up and easing up and easing up. And I've got photos of him with the SUV and the hunting house, the turkey and the decoy, and the end of my camera all lined up, and we're not 40 yards apart. And that bird finally, after about almost a minute, he strutted around her, and he come around where he could see him good, but he just folded up and took one last look at her and walked off. And I think they can get in such a zone, and I think that helps you a little bit in turkey hunting too, that if they're focused on a hen or whatever, there's times that you can move and times you can't move, but they're just an amazing bird. And I have so much respect for the hens because they have that big burden of trying to hatch off a nest and brood, their little ones up to 3 weeks when they can get off the ground and then get them on through the summer. That I really have a soft spot for hens. They're an amazing little creature that can withstand what they do. Just like that 8.5-inch rain. If that had been when they had a nest or whatever, then they've just got to think about starting over.
She's referring to her backyard. I don't know if y'all saw it, but you can see like the tops of lawn chairs sticking up out of the water on your pier and stuff like that.
We had 8.5 inches of rain, and it was in 36 hours, night before last. So, but and I saw the local flock that morning, and they were like a bunch of wet buzzards. I mean, just as wet as you could get a turkey. And
it's so interesting to me how, and we were hitting on this earlier, a hunter pulls the trigger, and then I don't want to say the fun is over, but you're definitely dealing with a different chapter at that point. But when you're holding a camera and you pull the trigger, that turkey's most of the time still going to be there. So you've learned a lot along the way. We tend to do that as deer hunters now. We don't always just pull the trigger as soon as that buck steps out. And, that's so cool that you get to see some grunting and chasing and stuff that we never saw before. So what are some things that you've seen that, I know you've seen a lot of cool stuff, but what are some really cool things that you've seen that had you pulled the trigger, you wouldn't have seen?
Well, you'll see other turkeys come in, and you learn a little bit about the signals too, behaviors that they do. And I think there's one behavior that is kind of interesting, and I don't know, you guys might have seen it before, but if there's a longbeard in there, and all of a sudden he'll stand up and his tail will start bouncing, kind of like a songbird, and sometimes he'll whine. And there's another gobbler usually somewhere. He's seen him, and it's the signals they give you in that high head. I call it high heading. When I've got a gobbler in front of me or several gobblers, especially jakes. Jakes will do it too, but there'll be hens that I don't see, but they know they're there long before they ever get there. And they'll put that head up. You've seen them point their head up like this and stand just as tall as they can. And they almost don't even move. They just get like statues, and that beak goes up, and pretty soon there's going to be hens coming out. And that's a signal that, there might be another gobbler coming too.
Like,
and you might get to see a fight.
It's like they're turning their radar on.
It is. And the jakes, I call them jerks sometimes, I'll confess. Thugs. They are the most fun because you can mess with them with the call, which I typically just use my voice because I want both my hands ready with the camera. But we've got a jake at the house now that's got the loudest, most off-key yelp. You'll see it on social media here pretty quick. But they, like when you hear Jake yelps and you can't see the turkeys, when they're standing around me, and you've probably seen this, y'all have been in the woods enough, but they'll do that when a gobbler does a spit and drum.
That's right. Calkin, we talked about it last week.
Calkin. That's what it is. And they'll let me know that there's probably a longbeard, and pretty soon, here comes the bunch. But that spit and drum just does something to a Jake, and he'll just give that.
It's like an electrical charge.
Yeah, it's like you hit with a cattle prod.
Well, they're almost quivering.
Yeah, they are.
But that's what we talked about last week for everybody out there. If you hear that calking, you better sit tight and be patient. And doesn't mean he's going to show up, but 99% of the time there is a longbeard there somewhere. And he just strutted.
You just get to see all of this, cool hierarchical. Is that a word? Hierarchical stuff.
Social.
It's happening right now in our place. It is happening from now until March 15th is my favorite time to be there. There's 10 longbeards right now and a whole bunch of Jakes. And there was a fight the other day that I got to film and photograph that was one of the best ones I've ever seen for a crowd. But the noise that they make, there's so much audio. When you get a big social interaction like that, this time of year, from like Dr. Mike says, he said, this is when the groups are going to start sorting out, and the hens are going to sort out, the Jakes are sorting out. Of course, nobody likes the Jakes. They're going to tag pretty much where they're going to go, but the longbeards are, and those hens will get to fighting. The other day, there were 2 hens chasing 1 hen, and the gobblers strutted up, 2 of the dominant gobblers strutted up, and those hens will, and I see this every spring, they run figure 8s in and out of those longbeards strutting, trying to get away. It's the funniest thing to watch. Well, if you don't get out there and watch this kind of stuff, you never know how they use those gobblers to try to dodge getting wing flapped and beat to the ground. So
some of those gobbler fights look pretty violent.
I was just fixing to say, my history of when I've been, there's only one thing on their mind, and that's not just, win the fight, win the hen. It's like, they want to kill each other. It is. If they had horns on their head like deer, it's more violent to me than deer even. They
are. I've got a photo I haven't shown you yet. I don't know if it'd make a cover, but I've never seen them do the head swallowing quite like this. But a bull Jake, big Jake, challenged a longbeard, and the sequence of photos, he had a longbeard's back here, and that Jake is all puffed up here, and in split second, he's up beyond. You can't tell where the head ends and the other head, one head ends.
Wow.
Yeah. It is the most amazing way they fight. They go for the throat, they go for the eyes, they pinch, they pull,
spurs,
they spur, they wing flog.
Wrap necks. I watched them wrap necks one time. Oh my gosh! Somebody's gonna break their neck.
It looks like they are.
Yeah.
They try to bulldog each other. The one that goes to the ground, a lot of the times, not every time, because you can't say always and never, but it looks to me like from all the fights that I've watched, when the 2 big birds get fighting, their strategy is kind of like wrestling or cage fighting, where they want to throw them. And they'll push and turn, and they'll twist that neck until they get that bird to go on their side.
That's crazy.
And that's typically when one goes to the ground, he'll get up and he'll defer. He'll either run off
tap out.
Yeah, he'll tap out. That's a good way to put it.
I've seen it a couple. And when they decide to get out of there,
they're gone.
They look like a track star getting out of there too.
Yeah.
Like a bullet. They're gone.
You ever seen one get injured?
Yeah. Cool Whip.
Cool Whip.
He got
great name.
Cool Whip got hurt. I named the birds because a lot of them, like Lover Boy, I photographed him for 6 years. That bird was at least 9 the last year that I saw him. But Cool Whip was just this really cool old bird that showed up. He was already old, and I posted a picture of him recently on social media. He had a skull cap, a crown. I call them skull caps, but I think you call them a crown technically. That just, even when he was just slicked up, you know, walking around, it drooped over his eyes. I could not get the catch light in his eyes. It was like, oof, you're such a cool looking bird, but it just hung over. So he looked like a puddle of Cool Whip that was melting on his head. So I called him CW.
Oh, C-Dub.
What a great name.
Well,
That's
he got in
name.
a fight, and this has been a few years ago, and he got in a fight with another mature gobbler, and I've got it on a little point and shoot that I had at the time just for videos because my camera didn't shoot video. But they fought for 24 minutes.
Golly.
Right in front of me, bumped into the blind twice, and I could have reached out, you know, and did one of these.
That'd have tore you up, though.
Oh, yeah. I wouldn't have done it, but I got so excited I forgot to breathe. And I literally slid off of my stool and had to gather myself back up. It was the most exciting thing. You could hear them panting, not as loud as a buck fight, but they were panting because they had fought so long, and they just, they did the beak lock, you know, for a long, long period. And finally, Cool Whip won, and the other bird, you could see as far as injuries, you could see blood around the face and all where they had just pecked and pulled, and there was blood on the breast feathers where he had sunk a spur in, and that showed up in the picture, one or two little drops of blood. So I know they make contact. You know, that those spurs are pretty deadly. They've got a lot of feathers, but they do. I've killed birds you guys have probably seen birds that had an abscess or whatever. It's probably from a spur.
Yeah.
But that Cool Whip bird showed back up in about 3 days, and his head was looking really weird. It was
Swollen.
big.
Yeah.
From the caruncles up. Well, the next day it was even puffed up even worse. And I thought, oh my gosh, he's going to get an infection and die. But he swelled, and his neck was probably that big around, probably 3 times what it normally would be, all the way up through the head.
Wow.
So I emailed somebody at Turkey and Turkey Hunting. It was way back then. And I said, is this bird going to survive? Because he was acting normal enough. He strutted one afternoon when it was all swollen up like that, and he'd try to preen, and he couldn't get his neck back, you know, to get on that tail. And when he gobbled, it was just this really throaty, you know, garbled little thing. But he seemed like I had hope then. I thought, well, he's not acting like, and there's nothing oozing or anything. So the biologist got back with me, and he said, can't really say for sure because we don't have him here to look at, but it could be that he had bruising from all of that fighting and pulling and pinching, and his lymphatic system had gotten messed up to where he wasn't draining fluid, because you know they have all that blood that fills in and drains and comes in and out. And he was that way for, it peaked out at about 4 days. And I've got some great photos. I've done a photo journal about it. Just big old puffed up head. And then it took him about 10 days, 2 weeks, and it gradually went back down, and he was good as new after that. But I know that was it had to have been a direct result of that fight.
Oh, sure.
I don't know what else it could have been.
Oh, cool.
It's violent. I mean,
it is.
Especially if
Nature's metal.
it doesn't have to be too old, big, but if they're about a match is when it really gets. But I mean, we've all seen it too, where I haven't seen like the Jake fight, but I've seen the Jakes be bullies. You've probably seen a Jake fight or something. I don't know, but
Definitely
I've seen
groups of Jakes.
They're
I've killed a turkey.
cowards.
I remember first place I ever was able to buy, and you know I could not hunt it, didn't kill a turkey, and then the next year, and it was not a lot of turkeys, but there was just this one, and I couldn't. Man, he was old, and finally one day he was just standing up about 150 yards, gobbling, no hens or anything, and he folded his wings and started running right at me, and I thought it was because I was calling. It was three Jakes came up on top of the hill, and he didn't even wait around. He ran from him. Well, when he got in range, I killed him. I was not too proud.
Right.
But he was just about on a run to get away from them.
They do that a lot. That happens every year at our place. If you get a single longbeard and he gets too mouthy, and there's a bad Jake group that's around, they will come running to run him off. And when he sees them, that's when you'll see that tail bounce. That's when I first identified that what was fixing to happen.
Hey guys, Dudley from Gamekeepers here. I want to tell you about the all-new Gunner Dog Bowl. It's designed for home and built for travel. It's customizable, leak-resistant, light on weight, solid on durability, and rust-proof. Like other Gunner products, they're made in Nashville and designed for everywhere.
You think for sure that if you have a big, it's a glorious thing to have a great hatch. But if you have a lot of jakes, especially if you call them bull jakes, if they're early hatch jakes and they're a little bit bigger, they'll knock down the amount of gobbling that they do, you think?
Oh, I firmly believe that. In Iowa, when we were up there, we used to hunt there each year, and the locals up there would talk about, it's open country, and those jakes, they could watch those jakes from quarter to a third of a mile over on the next hill. They'd be working a gobbler and getting him gobbling all.
Right.
And they'd watch those jakes come over, and then we watched them fight, run that gobbler off. But and we went back to hunting the next day, and he never gobbled the next day. Now, whether it shut him up for a day or a half a day or whatever, but once they've run them off, that changes things anyway. Every day's a new day in the turkey woods is what I say, because that gobbler that's on top today can be run off the next day. It could be a group of bull jakes. We usually have 3 or 4 older hatch jakes around that I just call them thugs. They're just looking for something to do, like teenage boys. Where are we going to hang out and cause a little ruckus today? Yeah. But they don't really belong. They're not. Dr. Mike says that they don't usually breed. They can, but they're not as reproductively mature and all. But they've got the want to, so they're out there wanting to push those longbeards off. And once they get the goat on one single longbeard, they know that they can. They can do it.
Yeah, I always referred to them as super jakes, but bull jake seems more appropriate.
Yeah. Well, they're bullies. Yeah, I call it bull jakes for bullies. Yeah. And they can be, but a jake fight, now that's almost like
Keystone Cops.
Sissies, it's like, ooh, ooh. Ooh, and they're jumping and trying.
Yeah, that's what's funny.
Clawed.
The jumping. Yeah. They're up in the air and they're just, I call it Keystone Cops.
Yeah. That you think he thinks he's going to spur him, but then I don't know if I really want to do that or not.
There's no spurs to spur with.
How are they going to hurt him?
Yep.
Except scratch him. But they are very entertaining, and they're fun to call to when you've probably been out hunting and there wasn't anything else happening, so you mess with some jakes.
Well, you can't get rid of them.
Yeah. I mean, they'll keep coming back.
Yeah. I mean, you can wave your hand at them a lot of places and still.
Well, to me, it seems like I'm seeing less and less of that. Like, 15 years ago, you could go sit down and call, and a hen would mosey up, or you'd see 3 jakes come up to you. And I hadn't been seeing nearly as much of that lately. But really? I'm pretty hopeful this year. We've been seeing a lot of jakes on camera. Folks have been seeing a lot while they're deer hunting, and I'm ready to have more of that happen. I used to get mad when the jakes would show up, and now I kind of miss it.
Yeah, it's nice to know for the next year. You got a bunch of 2-year-olds next year.
Man, hunters, don't ever cuss having a bunch of jakes. Don't ever do it. No. That is your future.
Mm-hmm.
We had a bird that I called he-she because he wasn't either. He was a blend. And he ran with a bunch of jakes.
Wait.
Yeah. I've seen one.
What was this?
A he-she.
A hermaphrodite.
Yeah, hermaphrodite.
I'm loving all this lingo I'm learning.
Bobby's learning something today.
But when you're by yourself with a bunch of turkeys all the time, you just come up with.
Well, you see things that
birds,
you got to term it.
I've got my own common names for a few plants that I never bothered to look up. It's probably the same thing.
Yeah.
So you've got this turkey's got male characteristics and behaves like a female, or vice versa.
Yeah,
or what?
he was running with some jakes, and then this was some jakes with a couple of hens, and it was kind of odd because there were 2 hens that just hung with them all season, and I don't know if they were just a late hatch and they just didn't get broody or what. But this bird came in and he had no snood, no crown, but he was black feathered, no spurs, and no beard. But he would mount a decoy. And it's the funniest looking thing. And he was there for 2 years. And I've had birds. I've got a longbeard that was there 2 years ago that had no skull cap. You know, he had like a hen head almost.
Right.
Yeah.
And I had one that had no snood.
Do the feathers, the one that you were just talking about, did the feathers come all the way up the back of the head to the top like a hen?
Like a hen. I'd have to go back and look.
We'd kill them every now and then. We'd kill them, and we call them snake-headed turkeys. And everybody, the legend is they're the pure original strain. I've never seen them, but
really
in Alabama and Western Central, and then South. But they always call. And it could have been hearsay. But I did one time. I killed one anyway, like 12 pounds, and had like almost 1.5 inch spurs. Like needles. It looked like something out of Florida, but he had feathers all the way up the back of his head, and a little crest of them came up on top in the back. He had caruncles and all, but it was a little henny looking.
Yeah. This one had no caruncles. He was really lacking in hormones.
One other thing, this one gobbled like thunder.
Really?
You thought he was a 20-something pounder, but he was just a little old bitty, So I don't know. I've heard of that. I didn't know if you've heard of it. And one of Bob Dixon's best buddies, Merritt Rogers, he was in that crowd, old-time turkey hunters, and he called them snake-headed turkeys. And, it was a big thing. Oh, so-and-so killed a snake-headed turkey. And who knows?
I think she was referring to another where she said a true Eastern.
Yeah, they talk about true Easterns being the little black 15 to 18 pound gobbler.
Yeah,
that was the first bird I ever shot and he looked different than any other bird other than when I was down in Florida.
Yeah.
You get some of those that are real black.
That's a question for the great Dr. Mike. But I
remember
think you remember him saying that they kind of believe the origins of the Osceola and the original southeastern turkey are kind of the same.
Yeah.
And they evolved over time.
I think I read about that in the old McElhenney Jordan book.
Yeah.
We have a gobbler on the farm last year that I photographed and I sent to Dr. Mike. And I said, check out, he was doing a wing stretch. I knew there was something different about him. And I looked back at the photo and I went, oh my God, he looks just like an Osceola. He has black primaries. And I sent it to Mike and he said, well, there's talk about there were some floor Osceola type genetics down in as far north as southern Alabama. And he looks like a Osceola on the wings anyway. He's black, but not. I wouldn't say he was real black, but that's the first one I've seen like that. I've photographed longbeards. I think they were probably siblings. One year that had 2 solid black primaries. Have y'all ever seen those? Mm-mm. And then we've got a hen on the place now that has at least 2 of her center rectrices, the tail feathers are red. There's no barring on them. And then, of course, we've always got bearded hens every year, and we've got 2 right now. But that's in the genetics for some reason. We've had 1 smoke phase with a beard, which is pretty rare.
Wow.
We used to have a lot. We used to have a lot of smoke phase hens. I don't see them much anymore.
Oh, man.
Yeah, we did.
Our turkeys here, my dad had them through the state. They released some from over on the Mississippi River, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, when they were almost extinct, at least the map I looked at, they had that famous area in South Alabama, but there was a little teeny strip between, say, Greenville and Memphis on the river that were original, didn't become extinct right in there. But that's where ours came from that are over here. And I've seen, in the days when we all hunted back here, not far behind the office, it might be 40 or 50 in a flock, with hens and some young turkeys. It'd be 3 smoke phase hens. I'm not sure I've ever seen a true, white or smoke phase gobbler with my eyes, but maybe once or twice, like looking in a field or, they're so much more rare than
They
the
are
hens.
like rare as hen's teeth, as
We
Mike
had-
would say.
we had
But
a-
I have photographed one gobbler, a long beard. It was gorgeous.
They're so
We were getting a Jake and then a 2-year-old, completely white longbeard, but he had black eyes, so he was leucistic, and then he disappeared. Not sure what happened.
The one that I photographed up in Tennessee, the gobbler, he's gorgeous. He was strutting for a whole bunch of hens up in the mountains, and when he was slicked down, he was fairly dark looking, but he looked kind of golden. But when he fanned out, he had all this cream behind the tips on it, and he's just beautiful. That's the only gobbler. A friend of mine killed it. Like Mike said, it may have had a blend of some domestic turkey, and it was that erythristic.
Yeah,
it was
like
red and white.
like the one Vandy killed.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful turkey.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Just
yeah,
got
this
that
one
back
was
sitting
in
there.
Kentucky.
Beautiful.
It was.
Is it
You
back?
know,
Yeah, it's sitting out front.
Golly.
it's funny that all these things. I mean, I guess they're so either they're genetic, and they're so recessive they only rarely by some stroke pop up, or they're just mutations. Dudley probably knows more about that than me. I don't know, but it's so cool because like you said, it pops up here, and never to be seen again. It pops up there, never to be seen again. But I have noticed a couple, only in Alabama, not here, but they have like the feathers, really almost the most beautiful feathers they have right at the base of the tail.
Yeah.
It's just incredible.
Yeah.
But they're like maroon, like Mississippi State maroon.
Oh,
Just
wow.
beautiful. We've killed probably 2 or 3. Neil killed one. One day he was with you. He killed a bunch of them with Mac. But I think he was with David Hawley that day. But it was the picture they took a picture in the sun. It was a late morning turkey in late season, but it was just incredible. It was, I don't know what you call them, but it was like maroon. Literally that kind of maroon.
The iridescence was maroon looking.
Oh, yeah. I mean, literally the feathers, when you look at it, still had the little eyelashes and all up there.
Was it real black, like a melanistic? Have you all ever seen a melanistic, a black turkey?
I've seen pictures
I've
of a
seen-
deer,
Never seen
but
one,
never
yeah.
a turkey.
I'm not sure in
I've
person.
I've seen the photos of a melanistic turkey, but that sounds like he was leaning toward melanistic because he had more of the melanin in his feathers.
He did,
than
but it
where
was so
refracted purple
It was really vibrant maroon looking
or
color.
maroon. Yeah.
Yep. It still has a little tan band, a little bit. But I don't know. I've seen 2 or 3 kind of like that. But it's funny. They do have different colors in their fans, all the way to almost a khaki like a Rio.
Yeah.
The Ferminator is the industry's most versatile piece of food plot equipment, allowing plotters to do every step of the process, working the soil, adding seed and soil supplements, and compacting, from start to finish with a single implement. It's hassle-free by design. Set it for the seed size and simply drive the tractor, and the Ferminator does the rest. Check it out at theferminator.com.
This is Lanny at the Gamekeepers of Mossy Oak. I've been shooting Nosler bullets as long as I've been wearing Mossy Oak. Nosler ballistic tip ammunition is made for knocking deer down right where they stand. Nosler's famous ballistic tip bullet is the key. It has controlled expansion and bone-crushing punch to turn a whitetail's lights out. Bring home more deer this year with ballistic tip ammunition from Nosler. Buy now at nosler.com.
Interesting stuff.
So I wanted to ask, the way you photograph, you build a blind or you pop up a blind, and then so you're kind of dedicated to that one spot for that period of time.
Yeah, on turkeys, depends on where I am at the farm. I've got 4 or 5 blinds, and I pop them up wherever I want to have turkeys. And that's where somebody asked me a lot, how do you know where you're going to shoot? How do you get such good pictures? And I just tell them one word: visualization. You visualize. It's like when you're hunting, you visualize where you think that bird's going to come from, how you're going to set up, how you can move. Well, with photography, I put up blinds where I want to get a certain background at a certain time of day with a certain light, certain color. Depends on where the sun's going to be, if I'm wanting it side lit. So I do shoot a lot out of blinds for turkeys. But I will just take my camera and go and see if I can have a quick encounter and set up like I'm turkey hunting and put a little bit of brush in front. these cameras nowadays have these vibration reduction features, all these video cameras, same way. You can just carry it around. I use my shoulder for a rest and sit down and also I can be pretty flexible, but the bulk of the stuff does come from a blind because, I mean, I'm not shooting backyard turkeys. These are turkeys that are out, in the wild.
And you've got that big old shiny lens sticking out.
A big eyeball.
Yeah.
And I mean, they'll get close enough, they'll be looking at you, and looking at that big shiny eyeball. And also, because you put a big lens out there, and that's a good thing you got a hood on it because they really
every artist has a style, or they aim to develop a style, whether they realize it or not. And it's you obviously have a developed style. I can see it, but it's interesting to know that your mind is already has a photo in it before you set up, and it's almost like somebody's thinking about the wind direction and where they're going to set up, and it's a plan that you have before you go out. And you mentioned you probably do a little bit of both, but it sounds like in your mind you have a photo, you want the light to be coming this direction. Am I right?
Yeah. And for one thing, I want to share it the way God made it. And I love a lot of these filters and edits and all that go on a lot of these clips and photos that are moody, and they create moods and all in post-processing. I tend to be a realist. I want to share what I see and what God made. So I try to use light. God light is what I call it. And pray for a God wink. And I'll probably cry here. But if you're given a gift, that's the way I believe. I'm a Christian. I think we should use it to show other people that we didn't all just pop up here one day, that God created it, a God, however he is when we get there, we'll figure that out. But I want to photograph and share with people the way I see it as much as I can, and I want people to see things that may not get a chance to see, because not everybody is a hunter, but they can appreciate it. So I'm not targeting just hunters. I want to target as many people as I can to move them to want to be outdoors, because I think if you believe being outdoors is a good place to really reinforce that. So when I visualize these photos, I want to capture it and make it as real as I can.
Mission accomplished.
Yeah.
Wow.
Lanny, what you got?
Just a little bit, there's been a lot of conversation, over the last couple of years about the good that it may do to push the season opening to be later. From your experience in the field, I mean, you've probably seen more of the establishment of the social hierarchy than anybody, because we're out there trying to shoot them when they get close. What are your thoughts on that?
My thoughts are, I think a lot of the breeding is taking place in early March now for our area, but it's not all done. I think when Alabama moved it on down the road just a little bit, that gave an opportunity for those dominant birds to get those hens bred. And I think it's a good idea. I think it's important that you don't break up that social structure too early. And the pressure just of having people in the woods early is hard on that social interaction, that breeding urge, the rituals that go on every day. And when we break them up and offer them, decoys or whatever, and I'm not against anything that's legal at all, but I think the more hens you can get bred by the dominant birds, those hens know which bird is the healthiest, strongest, best. They innately know that. I mean, Dr. Mike tell you that. That's what I've learned from him. We can call birds and not necessarily shoot them every time.
Yeah.
You can have a lot of enjoyment. Now, that's coming from a 71-year-old woman that spent most of her life in the woods.
Mm-hmm.
That's not somebody that's just getting started like when I was 15 or 17 and I wanted to kill everything I saw, you know. It's, you go through stages. But
Pretty
a
wise.
little throttling on your own needs or your wants can go a long way to managing the resource. Not only the management with trees and plants and water and all the things that we do for turkeys, just what we can do to manage our expectations. We want to hear turkeys gobble. A lot of people consider that a satisfactory hunt, to hear a turkey. And that's what a lot of these regulations are based on, is let's get these guys out there where they can hear a gobble. As mature turkey hunters or outdoor people, we can set an example by, you know, saying, yeah, I'm in favor of that. Let's work for the turkeys. Those hens have a hard enough time. Let them breed with the best guys out there, you know.
That's a good question, Lanny.
Yeah, it was. I appreciate you asking that, because
so for everybody's perspective, she's referencing that Alabama
Bobby's
pushed
old
back.
stomping ground.
It was. But they pushed it back 10 days from the 15th to the 25th.
25th. And it makes a huge difference, because I usually see breeding start around the 7th. I mean, I'm sure now there's plenty of stuff goes on I don't know about. But over the years, 25 years, it's usually early March, depending on weather too. You've got to take all of that. There's no absolutes in it, but overall, they're still breeding in April. I photograph quite a few. You know, I mean, it's recreational maybe at that point, because one breeding is all it takes. You know, they've got everything they need fertilized. So, you know, your hens, like Mike and I were talking, they're promiscuous. You know, and the gobblers are going to want to breed until all of that hormone level lowers. But still, you want it. That's all the more reason to be thinking about how can we make the most hens at their best shape. Second nestings are never as good as the first. So you want those hens bred early and get in there and get the peak of everything that's going to be out for their brood when they hatch. You know, a second nesting is great. I had one that they were about 6 weeks old, according to what Mike estimated, in August. 4 little poults. They still had their little poult feathers on them. They made it, but that's an exception. You really want to. I've kind of droned on about this, but yes, Lanny, I think a week or two is not too much to sacrifice when you've got a long season anyway.
Oh my God. And I will say, even from the selfish, you know, killing turkeys perspective, the one thing you get is that you get a rip-roaring opening day. Instead of that, everything shut up when it hit the ground, you know, all in. It's just, it is in full swing. Daddy said it, and he's been turkey hunting 80 years almost. And he's forever said, he's hunting Alabama, but Mississippi now too. He would always say, within a week of the 1st of April is going to be the best. I don't care when you open, when you do it, but I will say that for moving it back. I'm, you know, I don't know me. I'm for whatever
is best
for the critters. I could care less. We just, you know what? We just hunt around it. And if it helps, I'll say this: so far, could be an anomaly. Who knows? It sure seems to have helped. What I've seen, has been really encouraging. You know,
that's good. Mac, you got a question?
I do. This one's a left field one, but as much time as you spend in the woods, I seemed on like a mid-morning when you see crows circling around and diving and ducking and all that. It seems like to me that there are turkeys like below those crows more times than not on a particular property that I hunt. Do you see a crow and a turkey having a nemesis interaction, or is that just an anomaly that I noticed?
I've seen them. They get on owls a lot, but they're usually up in the trees. You know, you can tell the difference. But yeah, I've seen just the other day, there's 3 crows that hang out around these turkeys that I'm photographing, and I see hens and jakes chase them. Actually try to chase them off. They were under some oak scratching around underneath, the leaves and all, and the crows come in there, and I'm wondering if they're coming in there to kind of pick up and feed on something they may scratch up. But I think there is, there's always some competition when there's food involved. Crows, I believe crows will eat turkey eggs. And they eat other baby birds, so why wouldn't they eat a poult or a quail poult?
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's a natural nemesis feeling between the two. Yeah.
I have not often, but I have seen them. But it wasn't 2 or 3; it was a gang.
Oh yeah.
Of crows, turkey had been gobbling, and I've seen it once only that I can remember. But in the woods several times, and it would be all of a sudden that crescendo of obnoxious, out of control, right where the turkey was gobbling. And when they finally left, sometimes it takes a while. You couldn't do anything known to man to make him gobble again. Mm-hmm. They shut him up.
They're aggravating.
Yeah,
yes, they are. They're obnoxious.
So I want to ask about all this time you spent in the woods. Can you teach us anything about drumming? Yeah, or give us your thoughts on drumming?
Well, I did a little thing on spitting and drumming, and talked to Brian Lovett about it, and he knew a guy up in one of the northern states that had a turkey, and it was like a pet, and he tried to figure out what was going on there. And the spit, to me, it looks, and I've photographed it a lot and watched it, like, right here kind of stuff. And to me, it looks like they inhale. Some people, they call it a spit,
right?
But it looks more like that, and then they vibrate that lung area, that air, and it quivers the feathers. Now, I'm not a scientist, but
I would venture to say that you've been in the vicinity of live turkeys more than most scientists, and I think they would probably agree.
But I've never heard a biologist or anyone describe it that they knew exactly. I can remember maybe 10 years ago that it was still kind of that mystery. I'm not sure what caused it. That's by far the best explanation I've seen.
Do you hear them a lot? Like before you see them, you hear them drumming?
With my hearing aids now, I can.
Yeah,
suckers.
Isn't it the coolest sound in all of nature?
It is. And the drumming, and then watching with the cameras now with a gobble. That bird always opens his beak and then gobbles the beak, and it took until they had these really fast shutters. I can rip off 35, 40 images in a gobble, which only lasts about a second to a second and a half. Depends on where you start it. But if you can anticipate, and that's another thing you learn, is to anticipate little clues as to when a bird's going to gobble, and they get a little look to them. And if I can hit the shutter quick enough, you can see that beak come open, and then it comes out and it opens and closes a couple of times. The spit and the drum, I don't know if they are intentionally quivering. Every feather, they've got 5,000 to 6,000 feathers on their body. They have an individual muscle cluster at the base of each feather. That controls those feathers. They can lay them up, lay them down, turn them left, turn them right. They lay like shingles. They've served 4 or 5 purposes. But just knowing that every little muscle in there has to quiver at the same time. If they suck in air and, you can hum to yourself. Are they forcing the air out, or are they humming? I don't know. I'd like to ask him and have him tell me.
The feathers the tail feathers vibrate so much, and I was like, could it be vibrating so much it makes that noise? That doesn't seem likely. The hum,
it sounds guttural.
Is the most logical thing I've ever heard.
And we were arguing that some individual gobblers are louder than others.
Yes.
And then also whether or not they're just controlling themselves differently at different times.
Yeah, my thing I was all big on is like, whatever. not to get into it, but a really loud drumming turkey was always an older turkey. So I don't know if you've had
everything
that
gets big and loose, you know.
Yeah.
You just, you know, when you get older,
Yeah.
you know, you just everything changes when you lose elasticity, all of that. It just,
You notice like the 2-year-olds have that little short,
yeah,
just kind of a drum without a spit almost.
Yeah. Yeah, but the spit, boy, when you hear one of those really spit, it's usually a deep drum. You know, you can and you feel it.
Yep.
When you're close like that, like from me to
And
Toxie,
when you can't locate it is the most unnerving thing of all.
Yeah, it doesn't have a directional throw to it. It's like a surround sound to me.
It's inside your head.
Yeah.
I mean, it's literally they got inside your head.
Yeah, that sound is. It's. I never get tired of it.
No.
And
I never get tired
You
of
sound
it.
very good. When you did it just a second ago. I wish you would.
Bobby just wants to hear it again.
Record it.
Go out in the woods.
Yeah,
No.
he's good at that sound, and then it's
Because I got a cold right now.
A truck accelerating
Yeah.
will make you think you're hearing a drum a long way off.
That's the way it's described a lot of times. So it sounds like a truck, you know, in the distance or something.
Have you seen that ever be? I know you have seen because you've been with a lot of good turkey hunters too. But have you seen people use the drumming to call one up before? Or you ever tried it or watched it work?
I've done it just to mess around with birds, you know, with jakes and stuff.
Oh yeah.
And just watch so I can get them to get alert.
Are
You
you
know,
getting
I use vocalizations to get a reaction and take a picture of a reaction,
Right.
but not to call in one. They'd need to be, you know, fairly close. I guess if you had a gobbler decoy out, you could mimic him.
Yeah, you probably
know.
don't even need it if you got the decoy, but you know.
yeah. You made a comment a minute ago that you're for anything that's legal, and a lot of times turkey hunters, there's just kind of so much going on right now that whether this is something that a guy ought to do or, you know, there's just different techniques and stuff, but. And I don't want to. I'm not trying to open up a can of worms here.
I know where you're going.
Go down there, but where do you think? Where's the line drawn?
It's just like technology, Bobby. I think, you know, where is the line drawn on how easy it's going to be to find a turkey or a deer or whatever? It's the same with what we use to hunt turkeys. There's reaping, there's decoys. I'm not going to criticize or try to divide a hunting community over legal methods, but I have my own personal convictions on what I think is ethical. And
so
you know, I don't agree with some of these methods that are out there.
No.
But I can't say you shouldn't do that. Right. I can just say I don't agree. It's not for me, and it's. I think there's some unfair advantage there at a critical time, like when we're talking about that breeding season and all, where you're fooling gobblers. That, you know, give them a chance.
So, two things, because that is a tender topic, but it is very important. So, one thing you can do, she can do, especially with all the respect she has everywhere, is not, you know, you don't have to put anybody else down if they do something you don't agree with. I don't see it's worth like putting the other person down. That's almost like you're trying to build yourself up, but maybe you can shine the light on a better way. That's a whole different thing than kind of putting somebody down. So what she just did was just kind of shining the light on a better way. What I will say on my preachy side, and it's just a fact, we all will sleep in the bed that we make. This is not something like,
that's true.
Blasted too many ducks. Guess what? You know, Canada's going to do their job, and we'll get a bunch of them in next year or whatever. What you have is what you have. So to the degree you're willing to take care of it is what your future's going to be like. And so that's the main thing out there. For your own benefit, better think twice about what all you do and the ramifications. That's all I'm saying for everybody.
Yeah. Well said.
You know, because I'm not, you know, what you do on your place is your business. It's not my business. And hopefully at Gamekeepers, we just shine a light on ways to enjoy your life outdoors more. But don't forget, it's easy to forget that we all sleep in the bed that we make, especially regarding turkeys, deer too.
Yeah.
Yeah. You
It's
own
a
your own
finite
smoke.
resource. I mean,
Well, like my dad used to say, look beyond tomorrow.
yeah.
You know, just use common sense before you do anything in life. But Toxie says it really well, that we've got a responsibility, and what's most important, our immediate need or want, or what's best for the resource.
Well, and she said one other thing I want to be sure and say out there to everybody, so important beyond all the X's and O's of this. She made a point right off the bat that we do things that she handles herself in a way to try to kind of unite people and not pit them against each other. And I do think in today's world, it is more important than ever that we try to be united, especially, let's just pick it off a sport at a time. Let's just talk about turkeys, as that's our passion and the core of our brand. So are we doing things to bring people together instead of not thinking about what we say and splitting them apart? So I think it's really important we all pull together in today's world, because it's a fast moving, there's no telling what things might be done to affect our future as hunters with habitat, with the wilds that we love, and it's so important.
I think we have all learned that the richest turkey hunting experience is when you locate one, you sit down to him, and you play the game with him. And we've all done different techniques to stand on one's head, and we want to throw one over our shoulder and walk out of the woods. But that experience that you can have leaning up against a tree, shaking like a leaf, yelping at him, and having him come try and find you is as good as it. That is the pinnacle of it. And there are other ways to experience that turkey hunt,
and take a camera.
Yeah.
You can hunt with a camera and still, that first 10 days they moved down in Alabama, you can still go out, and enjoy it.
Yes.
That's the thing. It's not like, that's why I'm all for that. It doesn't prevent you from enjoying a hunting experience. It just prevents you from killing one.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people too, and rightfully so, it's like they're hunting somewhere, other people hunt, or they're hunting somewhere it's not very
they feel
big.
Pressured,
and they feel the pressure, the insecurity, the fear, whatever. If I don't kill him, so-and-so, I can't stand that guy, he's going to kill him or something. So, hey, and I get that. I've had those same feelings before, and I've killed turkeys near the edge of the place thinking that,
If you don't get it, somebody else is.
If you're fairly secure, that as my friend once said, we want our turkeys to stay on our place. But if you are fairly secure about that, maybe take a page out of her book and enjoy him a little more.
Just use a little self-discipline,
Yeah.
Like giving up something for Lent. Okay, I'm gonna just hunt and not shoot. And especially like we had one gobbler for 3 years in a row on our farm just 5 years ago. And through all these things that are being identified that's affecting populations, predator control, hogs and habitat and all that, last 2 years, have just been a blessing. We've had 2 good hatches.
Yes, us too. I don't know what it is.
We wouldn't think about shooting a bird if we don't have enough birds to really, and that's what knowing what you have, and that's that pre-season scouting. I mean, some people say check your cameras, put cameras out right now, because like Mike said, the birds you see now, the number of gobblers, the winter flocks, are what's within maybe a 1 to 2 mile radius of you. They're going to disperse, but it gives you a good idea of what is in your neighborhood. We've got 10 right now. They're not all going to stay. We'll probably have 2 or 3 that'll be what I'll be photographing a month from now. But I know that there's probably going to be 7 more on my neighbors, and then there's probably some on their place right now that I don't know about that are coming from somebody beyond. So February is a great month to get an idea of, if you can't be out there all the time like I can, have some cameras out, don't disturb them too much, but see what you have coming in and crossing in front of that camera, and get a little idea on what you're shooting. It's like having a deer shoot list. So much like it.
One of the first times ever I've been able to secure an undisclosed location, so I can't say, but we had been able to pretty much watch turkeys off and on all the fall. And then there was it started to evolve into, say, maybe mid-January. There were 6 and then 8 hens. There was 5 longbeards that looked like they were 2-year-olds. and then 3 men showed up, and those 5 vaporized. We hadn't seen them in a month. I don't know where they are. But then there was the 3, and then there was 8 hens, and then there was 10 hens, and then there was 2 longbeards. That's it, just 2. Now they're up to 15 hens, and it's the same 2. And that's it. I can tell now, nobody's going to get to join the club. Those 2 kind of agreed to a partnership. And if somebody shows up, it's going to be hell. And they have just, but that process was so cool to kind of watch who showed up, But I'll tell you what, since those 3 showed up, those 5, you could tell they look like 2 years. They are gone. I don't know what, their neighbors may have a good year. Who knows?
So tell us about this farm, how big it is, how y'all manage it so that you can. Your farm, yeah.
It's 210 acres, and it's got a real diverse habitat on it. It's got a creek that runs 99% of the time. It's a pretty good sized creek, but in a drought, it'll get pretty much dried up. But it feeds into a swamp, so we've got a creek that dumps into a swampy area with tupelo gums and all that's in a southwest corner of the place, and then it comes uphill into upland. It was an old farm years ago, and we've got most of the ag fields planted in pines. Dad and I planted about 20 acres back in 95. He bought an old cast iron planter and put a boat seat on it, and I sat there and put 10,000 pine saplings. He measured off every row and everything. So those trees are up 20-some years old now. So we've got pine plantations, hardwood bottom, drainages, hills, 3 big, sharp, beautiful hardwood ridges.
What do you do to try to enhance it for the turkeys?
We've got about 7 food plots, and we try to keep red clover mix in all of them. We do plant cereal grains. We'll mix that in. We battle with wild radishes, and we're going to have to do. We didn't plant clover in the one big field this last fall because it's just gotten so prevalent that we just put wheat and oats in it and gonna burn it down.
There's some broadleaf killing.
Yeah, we've got to do that now. They're beautiful to photograph in, but it's not. I want to get back to getting that crimson clover, to where I can do something with it. So we've got our 2 biggest plots. We're battling wild radish, so they're cereal grains, but the turkeys are down in them. We had the worst mass crop ever in 35 years I've been there. So our plots are super, you could put golf balls on them, and the baskets are knee high. So our food plots were really important this year for the turkeys and the deer. And we burn our native areas. Now that we're older, it's like more and more of this open stuff behind the house is turning in. We're tired of mowing it, so we're developing that into native areas with viewing lanes. So game may come right up, like in a rainy day, they'll just walk right up there in the backyard and go down the next viewing lane. We don't feed in the yard or any of that kind of stuff, but we've got a good mix of rubus, of all your blackberries, dewberries, and all that in those native areas, with a lot of your native grasses, panic grasses, and viburnums, and all that. All your native forbs that the deer and the turkeys can both use, and they nest in it. So we've got one big 3-acre pond, and we've got some little potholes that Dad dug out for water sources scattered on that 200 acres. So we try to, we're low budget, low tech. We got an old Massey Ferguson tractor that's got when I moved there, but we get enough done that we can enjoy it and have some wildlife.
Quick question. I didn't anticipate this one starting out, but what would you say quickly would be one of your top 2 or 3 native plants for turkeys? If you had, you notice you said a couple of them. Were any that stand out of more importance to you that you found?
Well, for nesting cover, I would say the blackberry and dewberry patches, because I've photographed them, nests in them multiple times.
I'm glad you said it, because I loved behind the burn, the blackberries have gotten so thick, the vines are so heavy, they don't really burn all the leaves, and it kills them. So it's just like this web
canopy
over the top, and no hawk or anything could get in there,
Exactly.
but it's open at the bottom so that folks could get around. So I actually looked out there hoping that would be really good,
Yeah.
poult rearing.
You just seem to describe practices that, from back in the, 40 acre and a mule day, what produced all these bobwhite quail here in the Southeast was constantly out in the field doing little, piddling and disking this and, cutting down this cedar tree to make a fence post, but you leave the top laying there.
Yep.
You got little briar thickets. Dr.
Bobby Watkins, correct?
Oh, for
Good
sure.
close friend.
Oh, yeah.
I
Very
did a
well.
lot of work with him with BASF, and he said he coined that word rabbitat.
Rabbitat.
I was with him doing photos of pine plantations, and he said if you've got a lot of rabbits, you've got good habitat for almost everything. And I never really forgot that. And we did the hinge cutting, dropping stuff, letting it grow up we have a lot of honeysuckle and jasmine, but the deer are eating jasmine this year. I'm telling you, they're eating everything. So, and privet. But,
That's a bad sign.
Yeah, that is. That's a real bad sign. But yeah, we do those little patchwork mini management spots where we'll go in and do something it might be big as this room.
And it works.
It does. And you scatter those where they might have to get through an open area where they're vulnerable, but you work them to where they're connected by, they make like a little bridge that they can go from one point to another.
Diversity.
Yeah.
And that hen may not, she may not be the smartest at choosing a perfect nest site, but if you have good nesting habitat in a mosaic type setting, then chances are she's going to put her nest in a safer spot.
I've seen, and I keep going back to my friend Dr. Mike because he's so wise in all this. And this illustrated what he told me when I was doing one of the Understanding Wild Turkeys columns. Your hens, their research shows that you have hens, the successful hens are more likely to be successful next year than the ones that are unsuccessful. That they found that some hens have a tendency to protect themselves, and some hens live and brood and nest to save the poults. They're like good moms and bad moms.
Oh, sure.
So you want to give them as much good habitat so that even the ones that are maybe not as devoted to the nest can find good, because we had a hen nest, I'm not kidding you, at our gate, 15 yards from the gate in the driveway, which is not on the highway, but still it was just right there on a little sapling that big around, right next to the gate, 10 yards from our gate, and we're going in and out of it, and she's sitting there hunkered down in the wide open. And then I find nests in these briar thickets, and the possums and coons will still find them, so those hens need every opportunity to find a good secluded spot. And I think briars are one of the best things, and they definitely take advantage of those areas on our place. We mow them about that high when the canes get super big, because they'll run their course after a while and they'll just be dead. So
mow them a foot or two off the ground and let them regenerate.
Mow them up high and let them come back. And every now and then we'll just mow it clear down and let something else come up. But I think all those thorny things are good.
Did you make an effort in any of these food plots to keep them mowed down so that they're more like a strutting area that a bird early in the morning would feel comfortable being in? Or do you make any effort to do anything like that?
Yeah, I'll mow strips down. I tell you, we've got so many deer. I don't know about y'all, but our food plots don't get real tall. they don't get out of hand in the spring other than the wild radishes. They get super tall. So yeah, I'll start clipping things off, and if the clover hasn't been choked out too bad, I try to stay above the clover. But yeah, I do I call it landscaping. I go out there with my little battery operated chainsaw and hedge trimmers and the bush hog on the tractor, and I'm going to create places. I like to disc an edge for dusting and for reading sign, because those hens are going to be out there that are nesting anywhere in the area. You know, I know our little flock and what they tend to do, but anytime you can create dusting spots, and they don't have to be that big. They'll use an ant mound. When they're incubating, man, they're going to come out in the afternoon and dust. They love a dust bath, and they'll peck around a little bit. And when it's hunting season, those old gobblers, old Loverboy would park himself underneath a low-hanging red oak limb every afternoon and wait for this one little hen to come out to do her little dusting thing, and he'd get up and he'd strut for her. Well, if I was a hunter, I'd be out there. I know if you find that dusting area, that's an important part next to a food plot, is give those hens scattered dusting spots around so they can get out there and do their duties. If I sat on a nest all day, I'd be wanting to scratch too.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Wow. Yeah. Dudley, have you got anything else you want to ask?
Well, I think that's interesting about the dusting spots. That was one of the first things my dad taught me was if you strike out in the morning, just go find a good upland dusting area where the ground is drier and they're more apt to go uphill, and look for a dusty spot.
You can't imagine how much time turkeys spend dusting and preening of the day. That is the predominance of their day, is loafing and preening. Anyway, the ones on our farm they go through all their feathers. You know, the little ones will lay out there in the sun like they're a dead dog and open their wings out. Little poults are fun to watch. But turkeys are constantly grooming. I think their feathers their plumage is one of the most important parts of survival, because I mean it protects them in so many ways, and every feather's got to be realigned. And after that rain, that big flooding rain, they spent, I know, all day, because when they showed up yesterday afternoon at 4:00, everybody was preened up. And that morning,
the hens look like they're strutting. That's so funny.
Oh, I know.
After rain.
Yeah. Yeah, they
all
fan out.
Yeah.
Trying to get dry.
Feathers puffed out.
But they have to do that every day to keep everything in line, and all the parasites and the fluff and the dander and all of that. So your dad was totally right. If you want to know what the turkeys are doing when you don't know where they are, they're usually preening or dusting or loafing. And that's where that patience and perseverance kind of kicks in.
For sure. And then I've got a really cliche question for you, but I've got a degree in photography, and I never fell into it. But you had mentioned some names like Paul Brown and Stephen Kirkpatrick. I love, always wanted to be like them, and had the slide film. And then when I started pricing some of those lenses, things.
Yeah, it's scary.
No, so what would you suggest for an aspiring wildlife photographer? How to get started? I know no two artists are the same, but if you can offer any tips on how somebody can get into that field.
You mean as a business or just as a hobbyist type thing that might
I would say as a hobby, but possibly evolve into, where can you take that step? But what are some first steps as far as maybe gear, how to get started?
What your target subject is, your style, what you're seeking the most, your budget. Your budget determines everything. You start there and say, okay, I can spend X amount of dollars. What can I get for that I want, that will effectively do what I want to do? I tell you, if it's somebody that's just getting into it and hasn't really, if it's somebody with a degree, they've already got equipment. But if I have a lot of people contact me on social media, how can I shoot good wildlife pictures. These closed system point bridge cameras is what you call them. They're not a point and shoot. Like I shoot Nikon. They have a P1000, a P900 that is sealed. You don't have to change lenses. It has just about every feature that more than you would ever use. I've directed several people to them, and they love them because that thing will go out to 1,000 millimeters, which is, overkill. But they can shoot the full moon, and I've seen some great full moon photos. But get something that you can throw in your pack and that you will carry, because if you don't have it, you will miss a shot. There is an unwritten law, and I had it happen last week. The first time the whole season I didn't carry my camera, I squeaked up a bobcat within 20 yards of me. And I was like, I knew that would happen, and I got a little lazy, and I didn't want to get my camera wet. But get something that you can carry, that you don't mind having with you all the time. And find people. This is stuff that was told to me. Find people on these social media sites that you like their work, and study what they do. A lot of them are very good about giving tips. Really, really get out there and pick people's brain. I'm not formally educated in photography. I'm self-taught, just like on a computer. I decided I wanted to do it, and I wanted to do it as well as I could. So I go to people that do it well. And there's a world of information out there for people.
Is there a website where guys can go or what's your Instagram page? How do you, for people to...
At Tes, JOVTES is Instagram, and Tes Randle Jolly is Facebook. I use Dropbox now. I don't even use a website anymore. Social media puts me in contact with
she's had more covers on our Gamekeeper magazine than anybody else does.
Right.
More spring covers.
Yeah, and you made a great point about getting a really nice point and shoot
as
a bridge before you decide to make the leap. I'm going to do the same. I want to get back into it, and I don't want to get all those interchangeable lenses and stuff yet. So
if you're thinking about carrying it with you hunting, those bridge cameras are even better, because you can get an Optec case that's kind of foam padded, throw it in your pack. You don't have to worry about the dust, and moisture is bad. It's a closed system. It has great vibration reduction feature on it. You can handhold it pretty much. So
okay,
I would. And they're within reason on a budget.
For sure. Well, thanks. That's good information.
What is that? Are we licensed to that to play that music?
I was actually looking at her Instagram. I didn't have my speaker on.
Flying hand.
Yeah, this
flying
Jenny.
Jenny.
Yeah. What is an Oola?
That was my trivia question.
Oh, I'm not going to answer it then. Hurry up, let me look it up.
No fingers on it.
I'm not going to cheat. Sorry.
Well, so
it's a turkey.
We've enjoyed. We could do this all day, and everybody's got. I know Toxie's got to run, but Richie, I'm gonna turn it over to you. Why don't you talk? Let's do the Sheffield trivia question real quick.
Oh, mercy!
Today's trivia is brought to you by Sheffield Financial. Explore swift, effortless, and convenient financing for power sports, outdoor power equipment, and trailers, fueling your pursuits in hunting, fishing, and gamekeeping. More details at sheffieldfinancial.com.
Richie, I thought Toxie had recorded a new opening that we were going to be.
He did the commercial, but not the bumper.
Oh,
sorry.
Okay. All right. Well, so we're real proud of Sheffield.
Sorry to disappoint you again, Bobby.
Once again, Richie. I'm getting used to it.
I'm staying out of that.
Yes, Sheffield will be at the show at the Nashville at the NWTF. They're a partner of ours. We're real proud of them.
That's great. That's great.
Guys want to buy an LS tractor or a Polaris, or they can
all kinds
have
of
it financed through Sheffield.
Well, remember that.
Yeah,
we need to upgrade.
We've known them for a long time,
tractor.
and they're everybody's got their fields that they are the experts in.
Oh,
that
no
field
doubt.
right
Yeah,
there.
that's right.
That's great.
All right.
So,
today, Tes is going to be playing for Benelli Boy 05. He left a review. The most entertaining podcast in the outdoor space. So much personality in one place.
Wow.
Talking about you, Lanny.
I don't know about that.
I think it was Dudley.
So, guys, if you leave a review, you got a chance to win one of these prizes.
And look, these reviews are really important to us. So I would appreciate, when y'all get done listening, if you like what you hear and you don't think we're a bunch of weirdos, leave us a review. It really helps.
Yeah, thank you, Doug.
That was very nice, Doug.
I'm just wondering
nice
what
plea.
they do if they think we are a bunch of weirdos.
Well,
just
maybe that's
just invite them?
maybe that's in a good way.
Yeah.
We're wildlife weirdos. So,
Because we are. a bunch
Hey,
of
there's
weirdos.
a new one. Wildlife weirdos.
Probably are.
So, what has Benelli Boy 05 got a chance to win?
He's got a chance to win a pair of Chernobyl eggs.
Of what?
Yeah.
What?
Chernobyl
eggs.
They're these eggs that glow, and so trappers put them on top of their dog-proof traps or
Okay.
in the area, and they glow in the dark. It's an egg that glows.
I
So-
didn't know if that was
that-
real or not.
Chernobyl.
Reading
That's
this.
a-
Well, I know what Chernobyl is.
I know
was
the
like
guy that
radiant
came up,
eggs.
Alan Horntagger Morris came up with that. I don't know if you guys remember the old deer salt mineral mix ratio that has been going around on the internet for years. Well, he developed that mix. He's been a wildlife nerd longer than I can remember.
Yeah.
Wildlife
so-
weirdo.
A wildlife weirdo. Alan
need a
Morris.
t-shirt.
I'm
Yeah,
sure
we
I'll
need- that's the
I'll
new
see him at
Gamekeeper t-shirt,
NWTF
Wildlife
next
weirdo.
week.
We'll start that
Guilty.
up. Yeah.
Guilty.
Okay, let's move on to the
right.
question. So we've got some audio for you to listen to. So don't answer. You don't have to blurt out an answer because we'll have some audio and then we'll have a question.
Gotcha.
Okay, Richie.
The blank, also called the sparrowhawk, is the smallest and most common falcon in North America, varying in size from about the weight of a blue jay to a mourning dove. You may also see.
Is it?
Did you want an answer?
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't hear a question.
I got an
Sparrowhawk.
Well, I got an essay over here to read. So,
No, you don't.
you may see a blank scanning for prey from the same perch all day long, or changing perches every few minutes. A blank pounces on his prey, seizing it with one or both feet. The bird may finish off a small meal right there on the ground, or carry larger prey back to the perch. During breeding season, males advertise their territory by repeatedly climbing, then diving, uttering a short series of glee calls at the top of each ascent. Courting pairs may exchange gifts of food,
My
usually the
goodness.
male.
Marty Stauffer over here.
You know the answer.
No, I'm gonna guess, but is it over? Am I supposed to guess now?
Sure, yeah, oh yeah.
Is it a kestrel?
It is a kestrel. How about
Boom,
that?
she nailed it.
Yeah, it's a little bitty falcon.
It is. They're
Why
beautiful.
didn't you just let her answer to the sound? She already
done
knew
with
what
it.
it was, Bobby.
But I mean, the
That's
listeners may need to learn about
We're
the bird.
trying to teach.
Yes,
people
yes.
We're not
absolutely.
trying to put them to sleep, though.
How many times have y'all been sitting there on a slow dove hunt and you look up and you see this dove come flying and you get your gun ready and then you realize it's a sparrowhawk?
Yeah.
Be careful.
Yeah. Little
Yeah.
bitty kestrels.
And the
They're
killdeer
Beautiful.
can fool you as well.
That's what I was going to ask. That sounded like a killdeer. You know.
Yeah, that was the first thing that crossed my mind was a killdeer, but it wasn't quite the.
I didn't realize that they competed for the cavities in trees.
Kestrels do?
Yeah,
They're
that-
beautiful
yeah,
birds.
That they need
They're
a
a
cavity.
cavity dweller.
Yeah, I didn't get to that part of the essay.
Oh, yeah, no, that
It's
was
at the bottom
two
part.
paragraphs
Yeah,
later. Yeah, sorry.
I swear I don't see as many as I used to, but that's just me. I don't,
There was a pair nesting up on the Capitol building in Montgomery that Jolly filmed through the nesting phase. They're beautiful little birds.
They are cool birds.
Yeah.
Jolly being your husband.
Oh yeah, Ron Jolly.
Ron.
Oh, man.
another icon in the hunting industry.
Yeah, yes.
No doubt.
Ronnie. I always said Ronnie. Ronnie is from way back when.
Yeah.
Ronnie.
Ron Jolly.
Yeah.
Yes, y'all should do a. Y'all should be able to do a Discovery Channel documentary by now. I would think you could do it too. Honestly.
It's incredible, and there's a lot of Native American history right there. I bet your food plots. I bet you find stuff all the time.
Yeah, the plot that I spoke about earlier, that's 300 yards long. We had my brother, when he was alive, he had a friend who was an archaeologist and brought him down that little high spot about a quarter mile from Calibi Creek was an Creek Indian hunting camp, satellite camp.
Oh,
that
cool.
The main creek village was on the Tallapoosa, about 10 miles away as a crow flies. And of course, the Native Americans, I have Native American in my background, so that explains a lot about who I am. But the first time I walked into that field, it felt different. When in '87, when Dad and Mom and I moved down here with my son, and I picked up a point. And
I'm sorry, I'm still on Tess's Instagram page.
Stop it.
I was trying to turn it off.
Stop it.
God.
It's interesting how you can get that feeling,
Yeah.
Oh, no
and there's
doubt about
been a lot since then, since I've read about what happened back there. But it was an ag field, so we had racing greyhounds and needed long stretches to exercise them. So we made a food plot out of it, and it was amazing. Points had been picked up there for years. Our mailman's wife grew up around there, and they picked them up for years before that. She said, we got shoeboxes full of stuff out of that spot. Well, there was still a lot there, and I got to digging around information-wise on our farm, and there was a camp there. We found stuff throughout the farm, but I found an atlatl banner stone.
Oh, wow. Atlatl
And I mean, my heart, it's like it's beating right now.
Oh, I bet.
When I picked it up, that it was like, okay, who was the guy that just had that in his hand about 1,000 years or so ago? And it was almost intact. It's the whole drilled hole it had one chip from probably a disc or something hitting it. It's a butterfly banner stone. Have found celts, knives, tools, pottery, just a lot of artifacts there. And I got interested in what the history was on the farm, and there was a battle called the Battle of Calibi Creek on January 14th in 1837 that coincided with the War of 1812. The Creek Indian War was happening then, too. British and the Americans were at odds, and they were using different factions of the Creek Indians in Alabama to fight for them. So they split the Creeks. The Creeks were fighting themselves while the Americans and the British were fighting. And that was one of the downfalls of the Creek society in the South, was them going with the two different armies. But I found spent lead ball from a muzzleloader.
Wow.
The flint from a flintlock that was locked into a flintlock rifle.
Oh my goodness.
Found a 50 caliber that had not been shot. There's so much history there. The old Federal Road, if you are familiar with it, it went through Mississippi, but a little south of here. That was the road that was opened up in the 1800s that went from the East Coast all the way to New Orleans. And it was a 24-foot trail that two horses could pass on for moving mail and messages and that sort of thing.
Okay.
And then it was widened out as the United States started pushing the Indians, buying more Indian land and, widening it out, what the Americans wanted. And the Indians went along with it. And they traded, actually, with white people that came through. But of course, we all know history, and that went bad, went south. But that old Federal Road, I have some old maps, it went through our property.
Wow.
And I found a trade pipe in one of the food plots, and Dad
Wow.
bulldozed out that a potter, on that. We found an old wagon wheel. So the
Golly.
farm that we live on connects, I think God took me there for a reason, because my great-great-grandmother was a Cree Algonquin from Canada. And God puts you in places, and I think that's probably one of the best parts of what
Tell me
I do.
about it.
Is
I can attest to that in a huge way.
Yeah, it's just a special piece of property. I can go back there. My brother died of a sudden heart attack when he was 51. I went back grieving to walk around in that plot. And you're sitting there, just show me a sign, show me a sign. I look down and there's no rocks on this property that we live on. They're all brought in. There's a little quartz stone. His name was Kirk. There was a K that had been etched in it from just probably the blades of the disc or something, a perfect K on a little smooth rock when I looked down.
That's amazing.
I mean,
there's
a lot and why did those Native Americans, they picked that spot because it was just above the floodplain. And people have always picked that spot, whether to plant stuff on or for me to photograph on. Look at all the things that are happening over the years on that one little spot. But the artifacts are there, and that just makes the experience of being out there and spending those days. I mean, I take a yoga mat with me. I may spend the whole day and let the turkeys wake me up from a nap,
Nice.
Somebody be
Nothing
right
like
outside
that.
there purring, and I'll wake up.
that?
So the artifacts are a big part of what I, when I'm out in the field, is to find that kind of stuff and really reconnect with the past.
Yeah, wow.
And the battle, according to the book by Griffin, there were two Creek Indians that had gone on a hunting scouting trip up the creek, and they spotted Colonel Floyd's advanced scout group that was coming down the federal road. They went back, and there were 1,500 Creek warriors surprise attacked General Floyd right on our property line in the Kalibi Creek battle the next morning at 5:30 in the morning, and they held them off until daylight, and then finally the battle went all through the swamp there, and they pushed the Creek Indians back down to the Tallapoosa, and General Floyd dug in with his troops. He had 150 wounded guys and spent a week there healing them up enough to they can get back to Fort Decatur and go across the Chattahoochee back to Georgia. And he never advanced further from that, for no advancement was made. So it's just an exciting piece of ground to be on, to know what went on when you're sitting there. There were Indians and guys fighting right around you.
There's something like that to a larger, probably smaller degree, either one, but there's that same kind of intention you have can be for anybody's property. I mean,
absolutely.
I think everybody should take some inspiration from how deeply she feels about the piece of ground she's taken care of. I mean, it's not like the true statement. We really don't necessarily own it in the context of the whole universe. We get to borrow it for a while and then, be responsible for it. So I just hope everybody heard that too, how tuned in she is to that, and everybody. Same thing we talk about gamekeeping. 4 acres, 400, doesn't matter. Have that same love of the land. That's really, really great lesson.
Yeah, and she didn't know all that. She's researched it and found that
and
out.
I'm curious.
You'll never find it all out.
No.
So, there's a lifetime, or however long that is, of enjoying finding out.
Yeah, and I'm not leaving that much of a mark on it. But boy, when you have a piece of ground, go to the local historian for your county and ask them for some old maps and who owned the land and what went on it. You would be so surprised what you can find out. I've got old soil maps. There's 17 different kinds of soils on that little farm. And those are keepsakes now. I mean, my son probably doesn't want them, but I'm dead and gone, but I'm going to give them to somebody that does. Yeah. But there's a lot you can learn.
There's a lot more to it
Going
than
to
just
the archives.
growing deer and turkeys.
Absolutely.
100%.
Well, and those Indians were hunting turkeys. They were scouting when they ran across General Floyd's advanced group.
Weapons they made with their own hands.
Yeah.
I'm gonna ask a question. We've been going a long time, so but and everybody needs to go. But do you think, in your opinion, are the and Toxie, don't chime in. I don't want to hear what she has to say, please.
Okay.
What is your opinion on the wild hogs, wild pigs, and the turkey nests?
I am convinced that any blind hog could find. What is that old saying?
Okay, yeah. But you think they're affecting them, though?
I do, because, I mean, I've hunted hogs since I was that big. And hogs are going to cover a lot of ground. They are ramblers. They're nomads. They go where their nose takes them for food. And they're going to randomly if you have a good turkey population with a lot of hens nesting and you got hogs, they're going to run across it. They may not be hunting it to start with, but they've proven in Texas that once they find a nest, they will revisit it. They've done it with artificial eggs. I did an article about all of this, feral hogs and turkeys, and they will revisit an area. They're extremely intelligent, but there's no way that hogs can't have an effect on turkey nests because they're going to stumble onto them and they will eat anything. They will. And they eat all those little salamanders and toads along the way too.
Exactly.
They eat anything. So I really think if you've got hogs, at some point they're going to run across a turkey nest. Well, one turkey nest is a heartbreak to lose.
So y'all been trapping a bunch of pigs through the years. So and so you're seeing turkeys come back. You think there's a correlation there?
I think that and predators, catching those coons and possums and keeping hogs in control. You got to do all the other stuff, but if you don't keep those two under control, those hens, that is such a big blow to their success. Is fur bearers and pigs.
Right.
And pigs, we had 25 visiting that field that I photograph in the whole month of December. 14 little footballs, little squealers with 2 sows and the rest all big hogs. And they're pregnant. You're looking at, an animal that you can't get totally rid of.
Nope.
They're going to eat first and ask questions later. They don't really
and they
care.
will eat anything.
Right.
They're meat eaters.
Even if they don't eat the nest, they're probably going to step all over it anyway. Because, they will ruin the entire area that they're inhabiting.
They ruin nesting habitat.
For sure.
You don't maybe see it in those native areas, but if you get out and walk around in them, they're out there rooting for roots and worms.
Oh, yeah.
And stuff like that. Unless it's just like they'll go into a cornfield and they'll go to the center and work their way around. You won't know they're in there if you're not driving the perimeter every day and checking or doing a drone run. They will ruin they did that to our cornfields. We can't plant corn or chufa now.
No.
We haven't. For 7 years now, that's gone. Because
you won't get it back either.
You won't. That breaks my heart not being able to plant chufa.
The only thing I've known for if you build a hog wire fence around something for chufa, but you won't be able to. The deer are going to eat the corn too. We completely quit. We used to be able to grow corn for ducks, but we can't even do that now. Hogs have changed everything for us completely. It's actually. I wasn't wanting to say something about them. I just didn't want to even think about it because it's depressing.
I didn't mean to put a depressing spin, but I wanted your what y'all are.
You've got to collaborate with your neighbors. We've got neighbors that trap also. That has helped us so much.
Good for you.
They are all collaborating.
I think one point I hope our listeners are picking up is that your farm is not a big giant. You're managing a couple of 100 acres, and you're doing it the right way, and you're seeing results, and you're working with your neighbors as you just mentioned. So
that's critical. Yeah. If you're 200-acre farm and you don't have neighbors that are like-minded, we live in the country, so we don't have close. We've got a little retired couple up here, but we've got a highway on one side, so we've got 3 sides. They're both big landowners. We all have the same like-minded.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And that's where you've really got to get out and try to, be neighborly. Know your neighbors, be nice to them. Take them a Gamekeepers magazine and sit down and talk.
Amen.
We did that with our neighbor, when he moved in, took him one of our books and took him a magazine and said, look, this is what we need to be doing.
Great advice.
Yeah.
Well, Miss Tess, we're so we
honored.
Yeah, 100%.
Hey, I'm honored to be here, y'all.
We're big fans.
There's so much respect. So much.
Well, I respect everything you all do. Every one of you have your gifts, and you all these guys we're not even looking at here.
Absolutely.
Everybody, it's a team effort. People say, "Oh, I like what you do." I said, it's a team effort. You cannot. Nobody is absolute in what they do. They all have help, and God helps us all.
He does. He does. You're a breath of fresh air, and I'm glad you made the trip up here.
Well, I appreciate it.
And we are so proud of our relationship with you, and so proud of what you do. So
thank you.
Guys, we learned a lot here. I know it. And the main thing I learned, the point I wrote down early on, is you don't have to shoot every turkey you call up.
Are you going to do it this year, Bobby?
I
think you should make a pledge, Bobby, that you're not going to shoot the first 2 turkeys you call up this year.
Well, I probably won't get to do that anyway. So.
Yeah, you probably won't.
Yes, ma'am.
Do I get to ask a trivia question?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, go.
Whatever your heart desires.
It's real quick. I
Okay.
mean, if you all are ready to get done, what's responsible for the iridescence in a turkey's feather that we love so much that just hypnotizes us every spring?
We should know this.
How does it,
Dudley?
what's responsible?
I was going to just throw a huge net and say God.
There we go.
That would actually be true.
Overall, you are correct. But drilling down to earthly things
Right.
on the turkey,
So it's like a substance? Is that what you're asking? Like,
I'm asking you.
I don't know.
I don't know.
I didn't learn that in forestry school.
Stumping us.
I just had to know.
Phosphorus?
Yeah.
It's
Phosphorus.
there are you have pigments in the feather. You have
Okay.
your barbules that come off the shaft, and then there's little smaller ones, and they Velcro together. Well, in those barbules are pigments. The color that they have different colors. Most of it is melanin, which is black. They also have crystals in those feather barbules. And depending on the colors in the pigments, when light refracts off of it, some of the light wavelengths are allowed through and some are blocked. So as light is refracted off, the different colors in those barbules, those crystals, refract that light.
So
that
just
iridescence.
like a prism.
Mm-hmm.
How about that?
Wow.
But they're little tiny crystal particles in that feather.
Well, guess what? Same concept as a rainbow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Think about it. So
God at work.
yep.
Yeah.
God
think
at work.
about the
Learn something new every day.
the magic of a rainbow. Well, guess what? We feel the same way about our turkey. So
Yeah, Rob, I see you back there. He sent me a photo of a duck from, I guess that was around the Chesapeake Bay. He's nodding. And it was some of the coolest iridescence I've ever seen. And he sent it to several people, and that's what was interesting is everybody's answer was, how can you not believe in a God when you
100%. Yeah,
I look at it as God winking at me. When when those feathers like flash at you, it's like he's saying,
hey,
I'm right here. I'm right here.
That's right.
I like her attitude. All right, guys. Well, I think everybody's hungry.
I'm hungry.
I'm starving.
We are.
for sure.
My stomach was growling over here.
That was great, and thank you so
Hey,
much.
Yeah,
thank
thanks for
you.
being here and what you do. No
Thank
doubt
you.
about it.
Thank you for
Keep
all y'all
leading by example.
Yeah,
That's
a
right.
good
y'all
one.
do. Thank you.
Why don't you say goodbye, Dudley?
Goodbye, Dudley.
Get us out of here, Richie.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of the Gamekeeper Podcast, and be sure to tune in again. Subscribe to Gamekeeper Farming for Wildlife magazine, and don't miss the Mossy Oak Properties Fistful of Dirt podcast with my good buddy, Ronnie Cuz Strickland.